Hey, what's going on, team? On this episode of the lecture series, we're going to be talking about breathing. Now, breathing is obviously a very important thing. I hope we all realize that. And if you haven't seen the core training videos and blog posts, I suggest you go check that out because it's going to tie into a lot of the stuff I talked about today. But breathing occurs through pressure differentials between our body and the atmosphere. So the atmosphere has a certain pressure, right? And depending on the volume in my chest cavity is going to have a certain pressure. If I increase the volume of my chest cavity, I'm actually going to decrease the pressure within it. That way, if I decrease that pressure, the pressure of the atmosphere is going to outweigh that pressure inside my chest cavity, allowing air to rush in. Now, if the inverse occurs, if I decrease the volume of my chest cavity, I'm going to increase that pressure. When it goes over the pressure of the atmosphere, I'm going to breathe out. So inspiration, or breathing in, occurs when I increase the volume of my chest cavity like that, and I take air in. Expiration, or breathing out, occurs when I decrease the volume of my chest cavity like that. Air comes out, my pressure of my chest cavity increased above the atmospheric pressure, therefore the air went out. Now, of course, it's the human body, and there's a lot of mechanisms at play. And there's a few muscles that actually allow inspiration and expiration to occur. Now, I'm not going to get into all of them. However, I'm going to talk about some of the most important ones. Because breathing is so important, there's a million things that happen when we breathe. However, there are a few muscles that are dedicated to breathing. And there's going to be one that we talk about in particular that's very, very important. So, when we talk about breathing, we have to talk about the things that allow our chest cavity volume to increase and decrease. One of those mechanisms is raising and lowering the ribs. Now, if you watch me breathe in right here, you can see I raise my chest. Therefore, I actually raise my rib cage as well. When I breathe out, my chest drops. I'm actually lowering my rib cage and decreasing that volume. So the muscles that help raise my rib cage are these scaling muscles here, which attach from my cervical vertebrae, so my vertebrae in my neck, down to my first and second rib. The other muscles that also do that are my external intercostal. These are just tiny little muscles running in a diagonal pattern that attach from each rib cage in between each rib. And these help pull my ribs up. Now, these are most effective towards the top of my rib cage and less effective towards the bottom. But as I breathe in, the diagonal pattern actually helps pull them up, away, increasing that chest volume, and then decreasing that chest pressure. The internal intercostals actually help lower my rib cage. So as I breathe out, the diagonal pattern of these muscles, which reside right below those external intercostals, actually helps pull my rib cage down. Again, same idea. They're more effective towards the upper ribs, a little less effective towards the lower ribs, but do the same thing all the way up and down. Now, the most important muscle for breathing is actually this diaphragm. So, obviously, you've probably heard of your diaphragm. It attaches down here at these lumbar vertebrae on some of my ribs, as well as right in this posterior chain as well. And what it's going to do, as I breathe in, it's actually going to contract and pull down on these attachments on these lumbar vertebrae. As it relaxes, it's going to push up. So it's pulling down. This balloon type shape is giving our chest cavity more volume. As I breathe out and it relaxes, it pushes up against my lungs, decreasing that chest cavity volume and helping me breathe out. Now, if it's dysfunctional, it can actually lead to a lot of problems like lower back pain. When it's functional, since it attaches down on these lumbar vertebrae, it can actually help us stabilize that lumbar vertebrae and decrease lower back pain. Now, other muscles that come into play when we talk about breathing, and again, if you haven't seen these core training, these videos, as well as the blog post, my abdominal muscles actually do a lot of the work to help compress my abdomen as well. The diaphragm also helps compress those abdominal contents when I breathe in. As I breathe out, my abdominal muscles actually help compress my abdomen. So I'm getting compression from both sides, from my diaphragm when I breathe in, and my abdominals when I breathe out. Our main goal with this diaphragm and these abdominals being such important factors in our breathing, in effective breathing, and stabilization, is to get better at what we call diaphragmatic breathing, which is breathing primarily into your stomach through your diaphragm and out through your abdominals. If we can get really good at this, we can help stabilize our lumbar spine and our pelvis and decrease our risk of injury and lower back pain. So watch the described video to learn some techniques that might help increase our ability to breathe in and out of our diaphragm, and also how this all applies to our bigger compound lifts like squats and deadlifts, and how we can use it to help stabilize through these lifts and through heavy exercise. Team, I hope this helped you guys understand how to breathe and breathe effectively and what it's going to do for us in the long term. If you guys want to see that blog, it's at tinywhiteboardworkouts.com. Check out the Instagram at John Williams Training or at tinywhiteboardworkouts for more fitness content.